Good morning.
Hi, Jasmina. Morning, Dennis.
We're starting at 10 or 10:30.
I think we normally start at 10 with this one. I think the only one that we change around is the data one, I think.
Okay.
But I may have missed something.
I am all over the place these days, so I'm popping in and out. I'll be here for 15 minutes or 20 minutes roughly, because then I'll go to another meeting, and then if I'm needed, I'll join again at 1:45. I didn't put my document in because morning, Glenn, because I just have a few questions to ask about things, and I thought it might be better to sort of just raise them as issues because it reads really well.
I agree. Yes, I thought so too. Well, at least I've only read the first 3 sections, I think, at the moment, but so far I'm very impressed.
And I was thinking we could have a really cool title. Reading somewhere in there, we have wicked. So I thought we could have the wickedness of modeling, pandemics, data, models, and challenges for the future. I thought it was quite cool. I mean, obviously, I'm more of a jokey character than a lot of serious people on this call.
I quite like that.
When I read wicked there, it just really stood. Yeah, it's a wicked problem.
Did I imagine that there is a paper that talks about COVID being a wicked problem?
There is. Yeah, there is. It's one that Andy is leading, but I don't think the original plan, and it was originally suggested by Bernard Silverman, and the original plan was not that it would be part of this volume, but it's taking a long time to really get off the ground, so I'm not sure quite
right where it's. Yeah, because I thought I'd seen it somewhere in the.
We had a discussion, discussion session in the autumn, with which Bernard led, on seeing COVID as a wicked problem. And it came as a surprise to me that actually wicked problems, that this is a defined term. It's not just there are categories of problems and criteria which make it a wicked problem and so on. But there is a paper, and I don't know where it's got to, and I don't know if Dennis knows anymore. But
maybe Valerie and Dennis, we could just have the whole team, the wickedness of modeling, data, estimation, everything.
Well, I don't know. I mean, given that they were writing that paper, I sort of feel that perhaps we shouldn't tread on those toes. But
okay, we need to come up with a cool term. That's the task of like read some what cool people do when they put titles in. How you define cool? Now let's not go into that.
Yeah. Well, I think we still have to beat Joel Spencer's paper, Birth Control on Giants.
Okay. Yeah.
If you know that it is about random graphs, you exactly know what the topic is, and it's a cool title.
Anyway, sorry, I was just quite excited about that term. I picked it up.
There is that paper as well. There's that paper called One Model to Rule Them All.
Okay. What is that about?
That's not cool enough.
It's not good enough.
We need like a music or like a film reference there. I'm gonna watch lots of films this weekend to come up.
My suggestion, understanding pandemics and how to control them, was kind of a reference to Magical Beasts and where to find them.
But yeah, how many papers are there already in the line of modeling in the times of COVID? Or
we could, what we should put contagion there. Contagion,
a lot of research.
The reality of modeling, or something like that. Sorry, let's talk about science now.
I think what a task for this week could be for people just to brainstorm like ideas, and we can maybe discuss it next week. Fun discussion for next week.
I was just saying before everyone else joined that I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. So I've joined for 15 minutes, then I'll go away to another meeting. Then I may join the last 15 minutes if I'm needed. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Maybe I can raise a couple of things when I read through it, because my document is not there and there's no point now putting it in because it's gonna clutter the inbox.
Okay.
So one thing is, so I don't know what page it is. When we talk about within and between host dynamics, I'm criticizing something I helped write. It's the aspect about the use of longitudinal data would be best supported by inference tools for IBMs.
Where are you, Jasmina? Can you?
Oh, sorry, in the section within, so there's no pages on this. So it's within and between host dynamics.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There is a second paragraph. Use of longitudinal data would be best supported by inference tools for IBMs. And however, this is particularly, so I don't understand this, and I don't know if I wrote it and I don't understand it, or if
No,
I wrote it and it got changed.
I think I wrote that. Yeah, I had flagged that actually. I read through it this morning and I kind of flagged that as being maybe a little bit off topic. But
Well, also I don't understand. So the linkage between, like, so longitudinal data would be useful, but
I mean, I think
go.
I think the idea, in my mind at least, was that there are two types of within host modeling. One is the standard progression between disease states, and there's information in the epidemic trajectory, in particular if you follow individuals, about what states you should include. So, should there be an exposed state, etc. And obviously with COVID, we've introduced like asymptomatics as well. And
so in a way, progression in the state of the disease and the progression in the theoretical framework that captures that.
Yeah.
And you are saying that they aren't always aligned.
I'm saying that you can in a population model, you can posit lots of different sequences like SEAR, different levels of infectivity and so on, but it's hard to know how correct they are, and one way of doing it is to have individual based models and fit data on progression, basically.
Yeah. Okay, but so maybe just needs one, I don't know, maybe it needs a bit of a, so if to me it sounded a bit off when I was reading that part. Okay,
cool. And then the other part of it within host modeling is more continuous representation of what individuals do, which is what the rest of it does.
Yeah, so that paragraph, the rest of it is quite nice. I really like it, and I like that paper on the Litko, Pellis, and Fraser.
Yeah, and I actually moved Peter's paragraph on the Wallinger and Lipschitz. It suddenly occurred to me that this should go here later.
That's the other thing. I have it here. So yes, that's right. So that fits really well there, because that is the concept that we're talking. I think. I don't. What do the others? What do the others think about this?
Yeah, I put a document in with a few suggested changes, but I used the version that was in the Dropbox last night, and I think Glenn may have made a few changes this morning, so I can go through and move stuff. But
you just put your version in, and I'll reconcile.
Yeah, it's there. It is there. So it can easily be. So it's a funny mixture. I only got through the first 3 sections, and it's general comments, but just every so often I started nitpicking on the wording when something jumped out at me.
Yeah, no, that's
so
really...
there's a bit on this section, but I thought basically it was good. There was something else somewhere else that I thought needed moving, but the bit, yeah, well, sorry, it's further on. So I think, but this part seemed okay to me. Seemed good. It all seemed good, actually.
Yeah.
Yasmini, you said you had another.
Yeah, so then I just a broad comment that the next two sections I feel a little bit long and mainly shortening and sort of comparison to the other sections. I think, but that's something that's not been looked at in more details. Maybe another iteration, I thought.
When you say sections, do you mean 6.2?
No, I mean accounting for human behavior and household models.
Yeah, I would agree. They need a bit of shortening.
Yeah. And the beginning of household models is a repeat of what was in the previous section. So that first paragraph.
Although actually, I think I looked this morning that Peter and Lorenzo had and GMP, I think, had written another version of the household models in a separate document.
Okay.
Okay.
So
if that is the updated version, then I think that solves that problem. Because I noticed that as well.
Sorry, I rushed a little bit. 6.1, section 6.1, the section that is intervention and vaccination. Just a general note, we should be using analyzing, which is S, so everywhere English spelling, not American, right?
Yeah. Agreed, but we can worry about getting all those things.
That's fine.
At the end, but yeah, we do need to decide about data, which, depending on who's written it, is either singular or plural in this.
Yeah, I've been trying to make it plural, but I might have missed some.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just spotted I spotted both.
We put set in front of after data if it's.
Yeah. So it's, there are lots of odds and ends like that, which, I'm happy to go through and sort, or everybody can, as when we've got something that's nearly finished.
So the two aspects that are at the bottom of that before contact tracing, it's vaccination, and I think I drafted most of those, but having read like that section, immunity and vaccination, I think those two paragraphs are maybe too technical or too they need to be shorter and maybe merged into one, or part of it can go. So I didn't realize there is a vaccination paper. So if it goes to it, parts of it may need to go there about the technicality of modeling vaccination.
I think that does need a bit of shortening as well.
I don't know how much the vaccination paper is actually going to talk about modelling.
Okay.
I just don't know one way or the other, but we might want to say a bit.
But I think you have to kind of,
as opposed to the design of studies and determining efficacy and those sort of things.
But it might be important to say something about the synthetic behavior of exploring, evaluating vaccination, which is modeling.
Yeah. I actually thought as well, because if that's going to be the first section, I was thinking it could have elements which then appear, like themes which appear later on. So there's things like, trying to remember what I wrote them down this morning. There's things like assessing your conclusions, how robust your conclusions are to different assumptions. That's one thing that comes up. And then there's obviously computational complexity and sort of like exploring model space. There's also a bit of potential about estimation. So I thought there are themes that are within that current section, which maybe it does need condensing and drawing out, but then they sort of appear in almost all the other sections in one way or another. And I thought we could maybe exploit that somehow.
Yeah. The only other comment, which I think is kind of maybe the biggest here, is if you go to technical. So if we go to 6.2 and technical challenges, in the paragraph that says these considerations mean that it may be beneficial to use different models for the same phenomenon. So it's in that section, the third paragraph on the next page. These consideration, and Lorenzo had put a note on a lot of work, at least in the version I was looking at, and he said that there are two papers, Sebastian Funk and Ronnie Bowman, working on this for COVID. So this is the question around how do you get an average across an ensemble of models that gives you a measure of the epidemic or tracking the epidemic. Say, for example, what R is, how SPIAM gets the consensus values is done via sort of a collecting the numbers from everybody and then using an algorithm done by Veronica Bowman, and that algorithm that gives you a range. This is what you're talking about, Lorenzo, right?
Yes, that's what I meant. But also, if we're talking about model combination, model ensemble, that sort of stuff, there's a lot of work on multi-model ensembles done for flu or other things that I am not aware of.
So just to give you a sort of why I was interested in this is because the sort of the work I'm leading now around the epidemic estimates is around a modeling ensemble, and we are looking at so I would call the approach that Sebastian and Ronnie take a pseudo-statistical. Yeah. And then there is the concept of a more statistical, which if Ben is, I can't see who is on the call. If Ben is on the call, he'll know a lot more than I do about it. But there is a concept about sort of comparing the inference and the variance across the models rather than just taking an average, which is the statistical approach. And I've been invited to write a special paper for the Royal Statistical Society and present the work at a meeting, and we are doing exactly that. So comparing the Ronnie Bowman approach and Sebastian Funk approach versus a more statistical approach. I'd like to talk to you all about it when we've progressed further with it, but at the moment I am reading the literature. So we can, I don't think, first of all, there is a lot of work. There is a portfolio of work, and it's primarily coming from climate modeling and things like that. And so it might need toning down a little bit. That was my comment, but that's for discussion with the group.
Yeah. No, I basically said there could be lots of references that go here, and it's just probably sufficient to pick one or the other, but just let's put at least one or two here, because otherwise it looks like we have absolutely no clue that there are people that have worked on this.
So as far as I know, I don't think they're in a citable format. They might be a technical report. No,
sorry, I don't necessarily mean citing Seb or Ronnie's papers. I know they are doing it for R, but you probably are much further ahead than me on this, given it's what you are going to deal with in the next future. My point is that there could be other stuff that I'm not aware out there in general about other fields as well, like climate. For COVID, I'm aware of these two pieces of work. I don't think I could find Ronnie's paper anywhere. I need to ask her, because she's submitted it and it has been published somehow, but I can't find it online. And Seb instead is at least a preprint.
Okay.
It's out there. I can send you the preprint.
So that's good.
Ronnie, I don't know.
It's a good note. And Ben, is Ben on the call?
Ben couldn't make it. He's got some.
Okay, sorry. I'm staring at you all on my phone. So I suggested I speak to Ben about something else at the weekend. So maybe I'll just ask him we need to basically get a bit of a more literature. And I've asked somebody to look at scoping review for climate models, what is out there on combining. So we could just put a sentence or two once we have a result there. That was my comment on that.
There will be stuff on this in the estimation paper. Yeah. So you might just want to cross-refer to that.
Yeah, I think in general, this whole section, there's quite a lot of overlap. So we might be able to condense it down by kind of saying, well, it's discussed in chapter 7.
Because I think all the model combination stuff is very much a topic in that paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I certainly didn't mean this is not meant to be a review, especially not a review of other fields where people have combined models, because otherwise we'll never finish. It was just an attempt to flag up that we don't appear like we're completely dismissing stuff that a lot of other people have worked for a long time on, just because it's not necessarily on COVID.
Yeah, and I guess Yasmina and Lorenzo, I mean, if there are some good references, particularly like ones that kind of are a sort of summary or review even of those areas, that would be really handy to have, either for this paper or the estimation one.
Yeah. Not as far as I know currently, but we are looking into it. So
Yeah, no, that's what I meant. Yeah, if you're looking into it, you might
Yeah.
come across something.
All that those are my comments, and just to say that I agree when Lorenzo put about the political sensitivity around running sort of experiments with modeling during a pandemic. I think we shouldn't say that, or we should say it in a very sensitive
Yeah, I
way,
did try.
because
Post Lorenzo's comment, I did try and add a bit of words around that to make it seem less crazy.
yeah.
I'm open to suggestions as well. I mean, I actually, in a way, I like it because it's provocative, but maybe it's too provocative.
It's wicked.
It's wicked.
It was very much written in the spirit of like ignorant pig that says, please let's try not to look like ignorant pigs like me.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the point is that the last year has been one massive experiment, right, or series of experiments, but maybe not exploited as well as they could have been.
And it's impossible to kind of be like make sure that we're not missing anything. Like the literature has, especially preprints, have just exploded. I think one of my postdoc estimated that there's a 2-week doubling time in the number of preprints at some point during COVID, and I'm like, it's just. You can't keep up.
Somebody said the proportion of papers that I am asked to that I'm making versus the proportion of papers I'm asked to review is 0, because the bottom is infinity. I thought that was quite nice.
Yeah.
One more thing that just I mean, you might not agree. One thing I thought is it's always, I was giving a talk recently and I had to talk about why maths is the best discipline in the world, and I had to find lots of quotes from books and things, and one of them was that Albert Einstein said that he said pure mathematics, but I quote it as mathematics gives order to things, is the logic of things. And I thought maybe this is something we could think about. We all like books, and books we like. We can find a quote that goes under the title of each chapter that maybe sort of collects the story of that chapter. It will make it a bit narrative. It's quite, I quite like that, but it might be more work for people.
Yeah, it's worth thinking about. I mean, I was kind of at one point trying to work in the sort of Bob May quote about
because, like, for example, Anna Karenina starts, I remember the start of Anna Karenina is something like, it's not for all, but it's for one, but we do it for all. I like that book, so I can look it up and find out. And we can find something about the extensionalism of the Dostoevskys and put it in the estimation of data, because it just explodes. And I don't know, so things like that.
If you're going to look for it, for those quotes, it might become a bit artificial and.
Well, if it's only if we all have. I was more thinking if we have favorite books or things we like that we know the theme of, that we can come up with. Anyway, that's me.
Yeah, give it a go. Anyway,
can I ask a quick question about the household models section, or are we going in order? I missed it. Sorry, at some point I got a call and I got lost a little bit.
Yep, go for it.
So that I haven't managed to reread it. So I wrote a stub and I put it on the Dropbox. And I think, as far as I can understand, Daniel added something. Then Peter put some comments, but probably not on the version where Daniel added something. And then I'm not sure what you did, Glenn, in terms of putting it. And then some.
I think I just took the version with the latest timestamp, which may have been a mistake.
No. I think it's good. But when did you do that?
Like just like maybe 9:30 or.
Oh, today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, then that's fine. There were a couple of comments on the version online that Valerie edited, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody's comments are properly incorporated, and I completely failed to follow up from after I wrote my initial version. Daniel added a little paragraph at the bottom in the version that ends with DV. And that was about like clustering of households in neighborhoods. And I think that's completely missing, probably because Peter commented on the original version. That's the problem of using of using Word documents and uploading them. Or
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to make sure that every.
Okay, I'll add that. Well, actually, that's quite nice because then that links into Dennis's section.
Okay.
Spatial model, so it's maybe provides some kind of link.
Okay. Peter, I did manage to read your comments. Is there any particular? Yeah. So you suggested a couple of references to add.
Yeah.
And then you said that you are not quite clear what I'm trying to say at one point.
Yeah. Let's also let me get my document back. Sorry.
I'm happy with your comments and suggestions, but I just wanted to address these two questions.
Yeah. So there was that sentence where I said I do not understand it. So there's similar theoretical.
What I was trying to express there is that we know that there are biases in estimating transmission rate in households or something if the epidemic is growing, because you just many of the infections will be many of the people that you see or observe early on in their infectious period, and similar for households.
Yeah.
Chances are that many households have just started their infections, they're within household epidemic, and so that bias is your estimates you could extract from it.
Okay.
But so that's the paper by Frank somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, but I was wondering whether, so if you have this problem, you have certain biases, but then if you implement a control policy like lockdown, and the number of cases are going down, and you still observe households, then you will have epidemics that are like the epidemic is shrinking, so you have the opposite effect. And I'm wondering whether by putting together two different, if you have a time series where things first go up and then go down, then you can kind of extract more information because you're observing epidemic growth and epidemic decline in the same system. And this might tell you some information about the parameters that otherwise you would be unable to extract. What I'm trying to say is that if there is an exponential growth, you never know. So you don't know when people get infected and when you see them, because there is a delay. And a delay, if you have pure exponential growth, a delay cannot be distinguished by a multiplicative scaling factor. So the two things are confounded because in an exponential growth, they look like the same. But if numbers are going up and then suddenly are going down, because the trend is changing, you might be able to kind of disentangle the two aspects somehow. And I was wondering whether that also is true for at the level of households. And I don't think
that's interesting. It is worth looking at. I don't have much experience with data at all in general. So, and I said it before, data are scary. But is this a purely theoretical question in the sense that even if you can theoretically get more about parameters you cannot estimate in exponential growth, as the convergence is so slow that basically you will lose?
To me, it's a theoretical question. Two parameters that are of which you can only identify a combination of. Yeah, and they are singularly unidentifiable. You can only estimate the combination of those. For example, the product of those.
Yeah.
If you observe two different behaviors of the system, you might be able to disentangle them. So it's more of a theoretical question, but it's just, I mean, I wrote this between 1 and 2 in the morning, so it could have easily been like, I dreamt of it somehow.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. I know that in the second paper I ever wrote, I looked at estimation in branching processes, which was a purely theoretical question. I don't think we used real data again. But there we showed, Peter Guttorp once showed that if you have observed the generation sizes of a branching process, then you can only estimate consistently the mean offspring and the variance of the offspring. And third moments and so on, they go all lost. And what I show, if you observe only the number of people in each generation, which has 0 offspring, for example, then you can estimate the third parameter.
Okay, I see.
So you have but then again, for all practical purposes, this is completely useless observation. Because you need to wait until a couple of billion people are infected or so.
But this is the modeling paper. We don't really worry about reality here. I mean, I'm happy for bits to be cut, especially if the paper is too long. It was just a suggestion. I was hoping for people to kind of trim it down where it's less clear. It was just a thought. And
I haven't really had a chance to go through that section.
No, that's fine. But feel free to remove anything that is unclear, or at least flag it up. And I'm certainly not precious. Maybe Jampy could comment on whether this is a thing or it's just.
Together with Tom, he did something on estimation problems.
Yep.
Not related to households, but just in growing and declining.
Yeah, and then the first question in the first paragraph about whether the household models really can determine the impact of socioeconomic status on disease burden. What I had in mind is that you can just add covariates to your households. So you can have households of different types of individuals, but you could also have households of different types. And if you mark a household as, I don't know, overcrowded versus not overcrowded, then I suspect you can estimate a higher within household transmission rate in an overcrowded household. And so I was just maybe socioeconomic status on disease burden might be something that you can estimate also with standard statistics, but maybe rephrasing it as socioeconomic status on disease within household transmission or some other aspects of the transmission process that might be more relevant. That's what I had in mind. But again, 2 a.m.
So could I ask where we've got to? I've had internet problem for 5 minutes.
We're just discussing the household models with multiple groups section in 6.1.
Right.
It's towards the end.
Right. I had an overall comment, which I think has probably been dealt with. I know someone else referred to. There's a duplicated bit in about households. But I think the other thing is I sort of felt some of the topics were connected, but not cross-referred a bit as though, different people have written different bits and they've been put together. So I found, apart from that duplication, I'm not sure there's anything. I don't know if there's scope for shortening generally because it's quite a long section, but I was thinking more that I'm not quite sure of the sort of logical order of it. And if it does have a logical order, I think that the introductory paragraph for 6.1 should have at least a sentence that gives you a hint as to the order of the bits of 6.1. And that could possibly be done by just rewriting one of the existing sentences. I mean, it's I
think that's a fair comment. I was kind of looking for some kind of...
because it does consider quite a lot of disparate things. And I think it goes straight into some of the things regarding immune sort of complications, if you like immunity and vaccination, rather than, my natural inclination would be to talk about the sort of problems with the generic models first and come on to those sort of things later. But so I'm not objecting to the structure as it is. If that's I think it's in a way it's sort of more striking to go for a real problem first. But I think something in that opening paragraph that helps you see your way through 6.1 that makes it look logical in the same interest of logical sequence. I still find it rather strange that the real-time section comes before the surveillance one. It just seems to be surveillance comes first in time. So unless there's some good reason why one builds on the other, I suggest we consider swapping the order of 6.3, 6.2.
I am baffled by your thinking that it looks like this has been written, different people have written different.
How could that have happened, Lorenzo?
I'm really surprised that it's what makes you think that.
Well,
no, I agree. Signposting goes a long way.
Yeah.
I did almost wonder whether 6.1, it is very long and it covers so many different areas, whether we wanted to split it in some way. But if we don't, then some good signposts would certainly be helpful, because you sort of lose track of where you've got to halfway through it in a way, because it's just going on and lots of different areas. I mean, all good stuff, but you forget for a while you're still only in 6.1 because you feel you must have read most of the paper by then.
In a way, it's the sort of generic models which we come on to mostly later in the section that seem to me the things that really justify it, saying it's about structure of models, that it may be that the other things and maybe so maybe all the vaccination, immunization, contact tracing stuff should actually come in a subsequent, let's call it 6.2 and 6.1 and a half for the moment. So 6.1 really is just about structure, and but I think Valerie's point is a good one actually. If we can, if that that's a suggestion, there may be a better suggestion for how to split it, but I think it is so long that it would be a good idea to split it if
when you reach 6.2 you have lost the will to live. The idea that it's coming.
I didn't say that, Lorenzo.
No, but these sorts of kind of general questions are something that, for example, Francesca focused on the contact tracing bit. I focused on the household bit. We don't really have this oversight. Like, we can read and maybe suggest, but I think someone with more authority should move stuff around. And certainly, I wouldn't feel upset if the section of households is moved somewhere else where the overviewers think if it's better. For example, I certainly wouldn't object to that, and even if it's too long, trimming it. All of these comments are something that one cannot see when you're writing a small bit only. And also the other question was before I got distracted by a phone call. I was wondering whether there were any other issues, for example, with the contact tracing paper that have emerged that I missed that maybe you were discussing before. I don't think so. I think, as far as I understand, no one said much about that.
Yeah, we certainly didn't discuss it this morning. Certainly.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the contact tracing sections probably needs a little bit of reducing, and but that probably largely depends on the overall length of the thing. It's not the longest section, but apart from that, if you guys are happy with what's there, I think it.
That's okay.
Francesca,
I thought the only comment I had on this section was that very last little bit. There are, at least if I'm looking at the right version of this, there are 2 longish paragraphs and then a tiny one.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do with that.
I thought that one looked as if it ought to be incorporated in the, not the immediately previous one, but the one before that. I.e. the first, I think I was thinking of the first paragraph of this section. It's not right where it is, I don't think.
No, I would agree.
But you've got stuff about structure in that first paragraph of the section, and I think it could be absorbed there.
Yeah, and again, like I don't know if something is rather a challenge for intervention rather than modeling. That could also be, some paragraph could just be removed from this paper if you think it's more suitable somewhere else, or if it doesn't fit here.
Okay.
Again, we need probably someone who has a oversight of multiple papers at once. Francesca, did you send some comments at some point about restructuring? Was it about this one or the intervention paper?
Both. So I was just thinking that while reading this again, so my feeling is that in the intervention paper right now, the contact tracing is mentioned a bit more from modeling the behavior and clustering. So right now with what is in the intervention paper, I don't think this bit fits well, but there are some paragraphs that are in here that talk more about how to model resource constraints or how to model, so these 2 bigger paragraphs, right, like the resource constraints and also how to evaluate contact tracing by fitting to data that are maybe more of a challenge from an intervention perspective rather than a modeling perspective itself. So my only thought was that maybe 2 paragraphs that are more related to intervention could be taken out from here and moved into the intervention section, because maybe they're more related to,
or at least slim down maybe. So that, I think the resource constraint thing in modeling it, it's like needs to be included in models possibly. And similarly, the estimation I think is related to the model structure, but yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, those were just suggestions, but yeah, as Lorenzo said, I'm not. I don't feel like I'm able to do.
I don't really know what's going on with the intervention paper, so. But I'd be happy for some of that stuff to go, but I think it should be mentioned here, but it could be mentioned fairly briefly, I guess.
Yeah, it's always very difficult because they overlap, and I agree that it could be trimmed down a little bit, but I'm thinking that understanding resource constraints does involve a modeling challenge. The few pieces of contact tracing I've been involved with, one is Francesca, but also files, and the other one that is cited as, it's more of a simulation study, but they also have similar problems. The cost of contact tracing comes from asking individuals to isolate and quarantine when they have not been infected. And often epidemic models just look at infectious contacts. So you only track who has been infected and who is infecting whom. And you tend to discard those that have been contacted but not infected. And so there is a bit of a modeling challenge of how to include them properly. You can have a scaling factor, but you can do something better. So basically, I thought that bit involves a modeling challenge rather than just estimating the impact of your intervention or the cost of your intervention. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it does. So we'll leave it as it is for now. But if you find if you find you're writing something similar, maybe we can let's review the two, and then just see how to interlink them.
Yeah, I think at the moment it's very similar because Francesca wrote one for intervention and it just got plucked here and there.
Okay.
So it's more than similar.
Okay.
It's probably identical.
Identical. we should review that then. Maybe mark it so that we remember.
But my question, Francesca, was also, did you suggest anything about the structure? I remember an email you sent around, and I don't know whether it was about the modeling paper or the interventions paper.
No, it was about how to, one possibility for distributing this contact tracing discussion between the two papers. So it was just about this.
So
should we
the wording of these, then that's probably not a bad thing anyway, is it? So.
All right. So just one question. So should we take care of distributing the paragraph and choose what goes where, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have a view on that, then I would just do it, and we can work with what's left.
Okay.
And or decide if we want to, have a level of duplication. I mean, obviously not word for word, but some of the ideas might be relevant.
Yeah, I mean that you might want to come at it from a slightly different perspective in the two papers, and so you might want to say something that's complementary in each place and cross-refer. So,
right, right, yeah, okay.
And also, I mean, the estimation thing, I might mention it in the estimation paper as well as a chat. It's like an example of a challenge. So we're not going into a lot of detail, but I think it'd be nice to have, and wherever that, even whichever that, if that's in the interventions, then that's great, or the modelling, that's also fine. So
I think the point is we can't assume that people will read all the papers, as a single thing. So the main thing, if we put in lots of cross-references, that will cover ourselves with all these issues, but also send them from one to the other, which will be useful. So.
Right. So anyway, the general idea here is that it should be good to cut it down a bit as a paragraph in this paper.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
As long as you're not losing.
Right. Okay, I'll work on it.
It reads well though, so don't lose too much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on it a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
That'd be great.
Valerie, I'm really upset that you think that some reader will not read all of the challenges very, very carefully after all the effort we're putting.
Well, because it's not a physical volume. Nobody's ever going to hold it in their hand,
I'm joking. I completely agree with you. It's outrageous, these lazy readers.
But I think because we're so involved with them all, one tends to assume that something you say in one place, they will, like an introduction, they will know. And well, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. Good to remember that. I mean, actually, people may just read the section that they're interested in this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I'll have a think about breaking up 6.1 or ordering it in some more logical way. Sorry, I can't do two things at once.
Oh, it's terrible. I completely understand.
Barely do one thing at a time. Right. So yeah, I mean, I think there's broadly two possibilities. I think the 6.1. One is to order it in a way which seems to where the sections seem to link, and I was kind of mentioning at the beginning that I thought, you know, there are some common themes that come across, but it might be that we just want to split it in some way. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's got any strong opinions about that. They can maybe let me know, or if something suddenly occurs to you, just let me know.
I think, like Dennis, I have a sort of natural inclination to start with the simpler things, the basic structures, and then add on. But as he said, it might be better. You know, it might be that motivating things by the real problems is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also what's simple is somewhat in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
Yes. Okay. Well, the more generic things, I suppose, and the things which have not been devised to meet a very particular specific purpose.
Yeah.
More sort of
I think the other thing that I think it will be quite good for people to think about is whether there's any obvious area of modelling that we're not covering at the moment that we've just had a blind spot on. I'm not necessarily thinking people are going to solve that now, but again, over the next week, if we identify next week, we need a paragraph on this. I mean, there's not really much on network modeling, for example, at the moment, although it's touched on, I guess, in several. It's mentioned in a few places, but there's nothing specifically on that.
Having done a terrible amount of work in network modeling, I have the suspicion that it's completely useless in this pandemic.
Yeah, but then we're also thinking about this for future pandemics, which might have different characteristics. So.
Might have some use in contact tracing, but
well, yeah, that's the obvious place.
There were lots of conversations about reopening schools and so on, and they often end up down the route of how reopening schools kind of reconstruct a network of transmission that was previously disgregated. For example,
yeah,
if you have like cliques that are related to households, and then you reopen schools, then you connect those. But I always find all of those kind of discussions very much like I'm thinking about it as a network, but I wouldn't know what shape this network has, nor how to analyze it.
Yeah.
So often the idea goes back to, I don't know, how R star changes once I connect households. So it's always like a borderline between households and network models. And I don't think it's completely irrelevant, but probably something about network might be said as well. I always find it very difficult to work with networks.
I mean, I guess maybe it's because, like, you know, the household models and Dennis's kind of spatial models are kind of attempts to understand the contact structure, whereas, you know, the problem with network models is they kind of say, well, suppose you're given the contact structure.
Yeah. And then sorry.
I don't think that. I think network models actually refers to several different ways of looking at things that are almost possibly different sort of areas of research. You know, I think there are. I mean, epidemic models are network models in a sort of, in a basic sort of sense. Yeah. So, and I think, and I think network thinking sort of encourages one to look for, you know, even if you end up doing the mathematics on various simple things which don't really need a network description. You know, thinking in terms of networks makes you realize that there are things in between metapopulation models and spatial models. And even if we decide that really we just use metapopulation models and spatial models for our actual analysis, to understand that there's a sort of, that reality is some sort of mixture of the two, and it is useful, then there are and then there are people who, you know, and again, I think actually most sorts of network modeling, if I think about it, you know, you can learn something useful from. I mean, I think the idea of looking at degrees and whether the degrees of people who infect each other are correlated, things like that, are important questions for, and you may, and if you're using a fairly standard model, then realizing that implicit in that is an assumption about that being one way or the other, is something you need to know. And then I suppose the third thing is you get, would you call Vespignani's sort of global models network models, or would you call them ABMs? What would you call them? I mean, I don't quite know where he's got with his modeling. It seemed quite useful or interesting at the earlier part of the pandemic. Maybe it's.
Yeah, I mean, we do mention ABMs quite a lot, and it's never clear to me whether ABMs are sitting on a network or not. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if we're trying to lead the reader through various disparate sorts of structures of model, you know, saying that all modeling of population structures is essentially assuming some kind of network, and while certain sorts have been found most useful and are still probably the most useful, we should be aware that it gives one a framework in which to look for new models.
No, I agree with that, but my problem with at least the network models I've been working on is that you can compute with them exactly because of the things where they are unrealistic. So you can do computations because, well, you assume locally a tree-like structure at some level.
Yeah.
And that is why we can do computations and we understand a lot.
I mean, in a way, I mean, is that not quite a useful insight to put in here, that the things that, you know, that's why epidemic modeling is difficult to do, particularly sort of analytical.
Yeah, no, it is a useful insight. I think that Gianpaolo formulated it this way, that many network models are analyzing typical networks, like a configuration model is a uniform choice among all networks with a certain degree distribution, for example. But the real world is definitely not typical. And now we can still go by a Hans Metz idea that, the real world is just a special case and not necessarily the most interesting one, which I agree with. But
I would like to add a couple of comments on this. The first one is, there are some ideas from network models that have been important in the COVID pandemic. One is Dennis, you were talking about the associativity, and also the degree distribution. We can think about having like some people that that have more contacts than others, say just adults and children or something like this, or vulnerable people being a group that is asked to have fewer contacts. And then you end up in a multi-type model. But obviously the degree distribution allows you to have a continuous degree. Some people have just more degrees than others. That could help understanding super spreaders if you want. So there are some ideas borrowed from network models, even if they have not been analyzed as a network. Some ideas that come from network models have been important. But also there are two things that worry me a little bit. One is that this is what I can say about COVID, but because this is open to future pandemics, if it's a sexually transmitted infection, for example, then I suspect network models would have been much more important.
Yeah.
So probably something about network models should be brought here. And the second comment is that I feel to a certain degree, we don't necessarily have a network expert here. Like I worked a bit on that, Peter worked a bit on that, some other people worked a little bit on that. But if we had a person that has worked in networks for the past 10 years, I bet he would have written a section of networks. So it's more like a random selection of people, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's what I was meaning, that it'd be good to just think about where we're missing things just because we didn't have the right people here.
Exactly.
And even if we don't have a section on it, we could maybe pick it up in the discussion.
Yeah.
I tend to disagree. Like when it comes to mathematical modeling or rigorous mathematical modeling of epidemics or networks, I think I am among the one who published most in the past 15 years. So together with Frank and Tom, probably.
And I agree. I agree on the rigorous bit. But
okay.
At the same time, I think your attitude is, if it's a configuration model, I can do something.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's very hard to do anything rigorous, so I won't do it. And I know there are lots of people that have tried to kind of work on approximations and so on.
Yeah, I've yet Joel or something. I'm thinking of him.
I'm just here trying to be aware of my own ignorance. But for challenges, I refer you to the network challenges paper, which I coordinated in 2015.
Well, yeah, that's obviously another route as well.
Yeah, but just to say that I wrote that, but I don't know much about networks.
Yeah, I think the challenge about dynamic networks is still open.
Yeah. Or SAS.
Oh, yeah, well,
that will stay open forever, I guess.
Well, not forever, but if you want to do that rigorous, it's
forever.
It's the real deal.
Yeah. So maybe something on networks should be brought up a little bit more. It sounds like it's missing because of maybe the people. Like I certainly don't want to write on networks. I don't necessarily want to work on networks anymore. But maybe Peter is more open-minded. I'm afraid I need to dash.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll try to give a look at everything and suggest comments on the structure.
Yeah.
Maybe trim down the house a bit if needs be. It's always very difficult because you can't trim down things until you know how long it is and how much it needs to be trimmed down.
Yeah. No, I think I wouldn't worry too much about trimming stuff down.
If you're wanting to think about whether we should put more networks in, I just remember that one of the people we tried to involve was Martina Morris, who's rather disappeared from the scene. But there's still her little short paper on model comparison in the Dropbox.
Comparing models. That's another good idea.
So that might be worth thinking if that gives us a way of adding a bit of reference to network thinking, at least.
Good point. But now that you mention it, then comparing models is also an open challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
yes, I mean, that's yes.
Yeah, that is touched on in the estimation paper, and
good point.
And it is mentioned here a few times, but
okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
I'll dash off.
Have a good weekend.
Enjoy.
Thanks, Glenn.
Are you disappearing, Glenn?
No, I was just saying goodbye to Lorenzo.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I got distracted for a minute and thought we were closing down, and I had a question for you first. That was all.
Sorry. I was going to. So I think the only other. Well, my feeling is that sections beyond 6.1 generally probably need a bit of editing down, but I'm happy to both those. One section I was going to say was the last section, 6.4. Yesterday, Luke kind of mentioned that some of the expert elicitation stuff to do with I've cut and pasted it into the latest version, but there's some stuff that the elicitation people don't seem so keen to include in the estimation paper, and that's to do with too many versions. Anyway, that's to do with essentially to do with using elicitation to co-construct questions and models, and I did think that probably would fit into section 6.5 and possibly could just be the final bit of that. So
Yep. Yeah, that would definitely fit. Yep.
And actually, in a way, as I think for modelers, that's quite a challenge for all sorts of reasons. The idea that we sort of actually build our models with other people is not that common, I don't think, for many of us.
So have you added that in?
I did. I'll make.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which
It's
version.
there at the end of the latest version.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's literally just some text from Luke.
Yep. Seems good. Is there anything else, any more that you wanted to say?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong bit. Okay, I found what you mean now.
Yeah, so
Okay,
there's quite a bit there.
Yeah, I found it.
Although none of them are my words. But yeah, I kind of thought that assuming they're happy with that, then that might fit quite nicely here.
Mhm. So should I have a go at seeing if I can sort of combine it?
Would you
What has
mind?
been
Yeah,
written?
that'd be
Yeah,
good.
that's fine. Yeah.
Putting it into that section.
Yeah, I'll have a go. I don't know too much on this topic, so I wouldn't be able to really add much, but I can certainly work in what they've written.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The references actually appear in chapter 7 at the moment. Yeah, thank you anyway. That'll be handy. So in terms of proceeding, should we just essentially try and do what we did this week, which was that I post a version by Wednesday? Or do you think it'd be better to have for people to have longer to read? Well, clearly it would be better for people to have longer to read it. But
Wednesday is fine for me, personally.
yeah, okay.
Would you like me to? I'm not sure I can combine the two documents now because you've got a different name.
Yeah.
So it probably doesn't work, but would you like me to transfer across any of my comments that are still relevant before?
If you didn't mind, if that's not going to
No,
take
I can do that.
that'd be
But
great.
if I try and do that fairly quickly before
Yeah,
people
I'll leave
start.
it alone. I'll leave the one data today alone for a bit, need them.
Yeah, if you could give me an hour or two, I'll try and transfer them across before the interventions meeting this afternoon, if I can.
Thanks, Valerie. That's brilliant.
Okay. I mean, some of them may be irrelevant now anyway, but I'll transfer across anything that looks if it's still worthwhile.
Yeah.
So who's working on possibly reorganising meeting 6.1? Is that are you going to try and do that, Glenn?
Yeah, I'll have a think about it. Like I say, if people had particular thoughts, then you could let me know. But
Yeah.
I mean, of course, originally we did have like I think a long time ago we had these were in a separate. Some of these were in a separate section, and they've kind of got amalgamated. And I think at one point we did actually have something on contact structures. So I mean, that could be one split, I guess.
Yeah, have a think. If you want an extra session on 6.1, let us know.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't got very much time next week, but
No.
I might be able to meet one morning. Maybe, actually, no, probably not.
Well, I mean, that could always, that doesn't have to be the first thing to be done. It may some of these other bits may
Yeah,
be more important because at least 6.1 is got
yeah, I'd say
enough or nearly enough, maybe too much in some ways.
Yeah,
material. So it's other sections that still need new thinking added to them that are perhaps a higher priority.
Yeah. Again, if you've got thoughts on things that need to go in some of the other sections, you could just maybe drop me an email. Or I mean, actually, in general, I kind of thought some of the other sections could do with shortening, but
I'm afraid I didn't get that far in my reading, but I'll try and catch up on that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, any thoughts would be useful.
So what's the plan for the week?
Good question. So if you could work on that,
Mm-hmm.
if you could redo that section 6.5, and I was going to have another go at this section 6.4, isn't it? I was going to have a go at 6.2 and 3, and then maybe try and reorder section 6.1 and or split it. And then the idea was to have like a version by the end of Wednesday so that people had a chance to read it by Friday.
Okay, yeah. I can do it on Wednesday afternoon if that's not too late.
Brilliant. No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then we're doing our own review sometime on Thursday. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Going through the comments. Yeah. Okay.
But if people don't think, if people want to just read the current version and send comments before that, if they don't think they'll have a chance to do that, I'm open to suggest, comments at any time, really. Does that sound like a reasonable plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much.
All right then.
Thank you, Glenn.
I'll get down to it. I'm going to make a cup of coffee first, but then I'll get those things
Well,
moved
I'll make you
across.
have a cup of coffee. Yeah.
I'll send you an email when I've done it so that you know
Great.
I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore for a bit. Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
All right. Take care then.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.